Hi, you made it to my channel, the Niche Gaming Hub. Today I'm going to review the Royal BM17. As with all of my reviews, they're based on my New Game Plus settings and regions where I use the trucks. At the time of this review, I've completed Alaska. You find the Royal BM17 in Alaska, and I did use it some here, but actually, because I didn't give this vehicle a chance in my regular playthrough, I had to use it in a separate extra save file in Michigan. I used that save file for vehicle testing, and that gave me a chance to see what this truck can really do. You'll actually see this about 8 minutes in. So in my main playthrough, the New Game Plus rules, I select Balance, Fun, and Challenge. I start off with some extra money and get 3 times more income per job so that I can buy some extra trucks and upgrades. My rules make buying all add-ons possible right from the start, which doesn't matter after Alaska anyway because you get to rank 30. But I do get that at the beginning of my playthrough, which gives them a little bit of a head start. My rules allow me to sell trailers and trucks back for 50% of their value, but on the flip side, my rule settings make automatic truck recoveries and auto-loading 4 times more expensive and fuel 6 times more expensive. They make all garage repairs cost money, and all parts repairs cost 2 times more points than normal for trucks within their region and 4 times more for trucks outside their region. The Northern American trucks would actually cost 4 times more if you damage them in, let's say, a Russian map. So 20 points of damage would actually be recovered with 80 points. Traveling between regions is paid, and when you buy a fuel add-on for any truck, you have to fill it with the fuel from what you have in the region. Now restrict contests to only 1 try, so you can't use them to farm money. Now I may mention hard mode every now and then, discussing how use of a truck might differ if you play in that mode, because I know many people play it, and use it kind of as a standard to judge exactly how easy or difficult your playthrough is. Hard mode does require you to suffer through many weaker vehicles just so you can survive, whereas I prefer to have a little bit of luxury so that I can evaluate the differences between the trucks, use their advantages, and have a good playthrough. I still won't be able to be reckless with my money or trucks, and some rules add more difficulty than hard mode, so the realistic simulation and challenge is still there. Now with that context in mind, let's talk about the Royal BM17. George Scammell, a wheelwright based in Spitalfields, London, started his business G. Scammell and Nephew Limited in 1837, focused on building and repairing horse-drawn carts and vans. By the early 1900s, the company adapted to the times by moving towards Foden steam wagons and smaller trucks. Lieutenant Colonel Alfred George Scammell, George's great-nephew, applied his wartime experience to develop the articulated 6-wheeler, which went into production in 1920, generating significant interest in the Olympia Motor Show of that year. On the 1st of July 1922, Scammell Lorries Limited was formed to meet this manufacturing demand, and they moved their operations to a brand new factory in Watford, a small English town on the northwestern outskirts of modern-day London. The company initially focused on articulated and rigid 8-wheeled lorries, which accounted for a large portion of their output for nearly 4 decades. In 1927, Scammell introduced the Pioneer, a 6x4 rigid off-road heavy haulage tractor with exceptional cross-country capability thanks to its walking beam bogie. An articulated version later proved highly successful. In 1934, it was Scammell that launched the famous mechanical horse that replaced many horse-drawn carriages, notably adopted by the British Railways and the Royal Mail. Scammell got into military vehicle support for World War II by producing large numbers of Pioneer tank transporters, gun tractors, and heavy recovery vehicles, as well as fire pumps and auto-coupling conversions. The post-war period saw the introduction of civilian versions of military vehicles like the Mountaineer, a redesigned Pioneer for civilian use, and the Explorer 6x6 recovery vehicle. In 1955, Scammell was absorbed by the Leyland Group. However, it continued to operate as Leyland's Special Vehicle Division, retaining its identity and focusing on heavy and specialized vehicles. This acquisition provided access to Leyland engines, gearboxes, and axles, leading to the development of new models like the Highwayman, Routeman, Handyman, utilizing Leyland components. The 1960s saw Scammell collaborate with Italian designer Giovanni Michelotti to create distinctive glass reinforced plastic, GRP, cabs for models like the Routeman and the Handyman, giving them a modern and somewhat futuristic appearance. The Contractor was a heavy-duty prime mover introduced in 1964, finding success in tank transportation and heavy haulage. By the 1970s, the Leyland Group changed its name to Scammell Motors on account of its special vehicle division being the main manufacturer, and in 1972, Thornycroft, another Leyland Group company, transferred their Nubian range of airfield crash tenders and LD-55 dump trucks to Scammell. Scammell Motors continued to develop heavy vehicles like the Samson heavy haulage tractor and the Commander tank transporter. In the late 1970s, Scammell was contracted to develop the Leyland Land Train for overseas markets, utilizing the same cab and bonnet as their own Commander replacement, the S24. They also developed the 8-wheeled Leyland road train called the Constructor 8. In 1987, the Leyland Group was acquired by DAF Trucks. DAF decided to close the Scammell plant in Watford in 1988, marking the end of Scammell as a distinct manufacturer. The rights to manufacture some Scammell models, including the S24, Nubian, Crusader, and Commander, were sold to Unipower, who continued to provide support and spare parts from their own new plant in West Watford, but the S24 was not commercially manufactured again. It is the S24 that SnowRunner based its Royal BM17 off of. The Scammell S24 was a heavy-duty military and civilian truck developed as a successor to the Contractor and Commander lines. Produced from 1980 to 1988, the S24 was made as a robust, powerful vehicle capable of heavy haulage and military applications. The military version was specifically designed for transporting heavy armored vehicles, and because it was adopted by the British Army as a tank transporter, replacing Scammell's earlier Commander, the S24 is often referred to as the Commander 2. The S24 was available in both 6x4 and 6x6 axle configurations, and the 6x6 versions featured a newly developed transfer gearbox. There were specific military variants of the S24s that were 8x6 and typically equipped with powerful Rolls-Royce engines, 350 horsepower, ZF automatic gearboxes, and Kirkstall axles for enhanced off-road capability and reliability, but these were labeled S26 drops, demountable rack offload and pickup system, and they were manufactured after Scammell had already been bought out by DAF and the factory in Watford had been shut down. The S24 utilized Scammell's own heavy-duty tandem rear bogies with options for 24, 30, and 40-ton capacities. While primarily known for its military applications, the Scammell S24's robust construction, versatility, and powerful engine made it suitable for civilian heavy haulage and specialized transport roles, such as moving heavy machinery, construction equipment, and other oversized loads for industries like heavy construction, oil fields operations, and specialized transport companies. Engine options primarily included Cummins diesel NTC 350 or NTC 400, offering significant power for demanding tasks. Civilian S24s could be specified with various body types, including flatbeds, low loaders, and recovery vehicles. Now, while Sabre Interactive may have taken inspiration from multiple military trucks, it is the Scammell S24 that most closely resembles the Royal BM17. In SnowRunner, the Royal BM17 is found in the southwest corner of Northport Map of Alaska, quite damaged. The vehicle is operational, but will need to be recovered back to the garage. You can find the race suspension upgrade in the Pedro Bay map and the highest engine upgrade in the Mountain River map. This truck shares its engine with a Cat CT680, so if you have both trucks in your fleet, like I did, you can use the found engine for one of these vehicles and the purchased one for the other. I was leaning towards putting the Royal BM17 in my highway category because of it not getting differential lock, but that was before I tested it thoroughly in Michigan, in my extra save file. I decided to put it in my heavy-duty category because of how well it performs when compared with the Fleetstar F2070A and the GMC MH9500, as well as other trucks in its class. Now let's talk about the dimensions and design of this heavy-duty hauler. Length, 8.6 meters. Width 2.7 meters. Length to width 3.185 as a ratio. Height to width proportionate. That means it's not too much higher than it is wider, which would affect body balance, or vice versa. So it's not extra stable like certain trucks like the GMC MH9500 or the White Western Star 4964, a little lower to the ground than they are wide, which actually helps them stay a little more stable. But this one's nice and proportionate. And that's with the raised suspension. Weight, 20,855 pounds, that's real life. They're on about 10.4 tons. Mass in-game rating, 9460, so 9,460. Body balance, my rating is very good to excellent. Again, with raised suspension, equipped, upgraded. I've seen multiple reviews and descriptions of the Royal BM17 online, and they all say something negative about its body balance, as if it's like tipsy. Honestly, I couldn't disagree more. I think this truck is up there with the White Western Star 4964 for being highly resistant to tipping over. For one, it's slightly wider than that truck and slightly shorter, which helps its center of mass stability, just giving it overall better dimensions, or just as good as that truck. For the other reasons that I mentioned, that truck also has good dimensions that help it stay a little more stable. Add to that this truck's greater weight, and you get very good to excellent body balance. There were so many cases where I would have tipped right over with many of the early trucks, but this truck resisted it quite well. The in-game rating is a good representation of its real-life weight, nice and proportionate with the other trucks of its class. That doesn't always happen when you compare the real-life truck actual weight and look at the mass rating and how heavy it seems in-game. But this one seems nice and proportionate. This truck has the typical configurations of a rear tandem axle heavy-duty hauler, but then SnowRunner gives it an off-roading handicap. Configurations 6x4 and 6x6 when you turn the all-wheel drive on. Differential lock unavailable. Just as in real life, the 6x4 and 6x6 are the two configurations for the Royal BM17. The Scammell S24 was designed for off-road hauling in both its civilian and military applications, so in SnowRunner the all-wheel drive comes standard, switchable, for the Royal BM17. The lack of differential lock is surprising though, considering that this truck is an off-road vehicle in SnowRunner's category, and even more so when you look at its real-life counterpart's history. But that's why I think it's off-road in name only, and one of the many reasons why I have my own categorization. Diff lock is very useful going uphill on off-road terrain, and especially when stuck in deep mud or snow. The Royal BM17 survives off-road because of its big tires, all-wheel drive capabilities, and raw power. That's why you should stick to auto gear mode if you have the balanced or highway gearboxes equipped, and auto or low plus if you have the off-road gearbox equipped, or you can just still go in high gear as well. You can switch back to low normal if you just need to keep the truck slow, sometimes like on dangerous terrain where you can tip over if you go right or left a little too much. So when it's dangerous and you want to make sure you're slow, sure, keep it to low. That's why I prefer the off-road. Just keep the truck slower if the higher gears are causing too much wheel spin. Sometimes in mud. In this truck, you would like a lot of the wheel spin because of the lack of diff lock. You don't want to depend on that and getting stuck in that deep snow, so sometimes you prefer the wheel spin. But where it's just not moving you or you're not making any progress, then reduce the wheel spin and try to power through. Hopefully you don't get stuck. Not having diff lock is a disadvantage with this truck, but not completely crippling, as I initially thought it would be, without really giving it a fair chance and actually using it. I would actually prefer the off-road gearbox for the Royal BM17, but I will explain more why in the fuel tank consumption and efficiency section. The Royal BM17 gets the UOD2 set like the other heavy-duty class gets, as well as a chain tire set. Tires, 51-inch off-road UOD2, 0.8 rating in the asphalt, 3.0 in the off-road dirt, and 1.9 in the mud and snow. And chain UAD3 all chains, 1.2 on asphalt, 3.0 in off-road dirt, and 1.3 in the mud and snow. The UOD2s do significantly better in mud, and the UAD3 are required for icy regions in addition to giving you more control on roads. Suspension, you can leave it in stock or you can get the race suspension. I would recommend the race suspension. Because of how good the body balance is, you don't want to lose the benefits of raising the suspension. One, you get the 51-inch tires, and that's a huge advantage. Even though the Royal BM17 is in the off-road category, it doesn't get any mud tires. Instead, its best tire set for off-roading is the standard one all the heavy-duty class gets, the off-road UOD2. And as with all such trucks, the chain tires are required for icy roads. So that's one of the many reasons why I put it in my heavy-duty class. I was like, okay, this is pretty much the same thing with some minor differences. The 51-inch tires are one of the biggest advantages this truck has over others of the heavy-duty class, accessing the largest size we have seen for this category so far in my fleet. Having larger tires increases the amount of surface area of the tire that can dig into the mud without actually getting stuck. Larger tires also provide higher ground clearance, which helps prevent trucks getting stuck in mud, swimming in water, getting stuck in blades of grass or marsh, etc. Larger tires for off-road, getting more ground clearance, always an advantage. The maneuverability of the Royal BM17 is typical of the larger heavy-duty trucks. Steering, I give it a medium turning radius rating, and control, I say average. The turning radius is on par with the heavy-duty class and maybe leaning more towards short than the others, but I still have this at a medium turning radius. There is some noticeable terrain feedback off-road, but nothing significant. Even with chain tires on icy roads, or even UOD2 on non-icy roads, you can lose control, more so than with other trucks. This works very much like the Cat CT680, honestly, in my playthrough with both of these. I still give this truck a rating of average for steering and control because you should be able to slow down when making sharp turns and resist the tendency to drive fast even if you have the engine power to do so. Plus, you're never going to be driving super fast anyway with heavy loads. This tendency is when you're driving empty from one job to the next. The SnowRunner engine versions are quite disappointing when you look at the Scammell S24's capability in real life. But in any case, the Royal BM17 is in the upper strata of the heavy-duty class. Real-life engine, Cummins NTC 400 Big Cam 488 NT. Turbocharged diesel inline 6-cylinder, 5.5-inch bore, 6.0 inches stroke, 14-liter displacement, 400 horsepower at 1800 RPM, 1,325 pounds force-feet torque at 1300 RPM with a max gross combination weight of 150,000 pounds, 75 tons. And that max gross combination weight is quite well documented. In this case, it's less of an estimate, as I often do make estimates, using real confirmed values and based on the truck engine. And I compare different trucks and I make an estimate of the max combination weight. In this case, it's more of a known, tested value and well documented. The game engine is a GB-8V 2700T, 192,000 torque, 9,460 mass, power to weight ratio of approximately 20.296. The real-life engines of the civilian Scammell S24 were most commonly known to be the Cummins NTC 350 or NTC 400. The military version's engine was known to be a Rolls-Royce, but it is unclear whether it was a 350 or another variant because that was considered part of the S26 drops and none of the S24. The Rolls-Royce 350 makes sense because it's in the neighborhood of the horsepower rating of the Cummins engines, and various variants of the Rolls-Royce engines were used for the Commander and Contractor lines. I chose the Cummins NTC 400 Big Cam 48890 as the highest possible commercially available engine upgrade. So this was obviously for the civilian version, because that's one that was confirmed to be the highest in that category. The game engine GB-8V2700T is one of the more powerful engines used by the heavy-duty class of trucks, but this only makes up for the extra weight of the Royal BM17 because the power-to-weight ratio is only slightly greater than the white Western Star 4964s. Still, when we talk about power-to-weight ratio, one thing you have to understand is, yes, sure, the white Western Star 4964 power-to-weight ratio is nearby this. That just means its extra body weight is not going to affect the engine in any different way than this body weight is going to affect this engine power. But a higher engine power also means more overall torque. So this is more powerful. It certainly was in real life, and even in the game, it'll have more torque because it has a bigger engine. Generally speaking, weights of trucks compared to the torque that their engines can pull, as one would expect, don't account for a majority stake of their towing capability, meaning the engine's power and torque is not all wasted or more than 20 or 30% wasted just on the weight of the truck itself. When we talk about power to weight ratio, that's just kind of a good way to understand how it's going to fly or how fast it's going to go compared to other trucks. But in terms of power, you always look at the engine. If you were to use a balanced gearbox and just use auto and low as needed, you would get more power and better fuel economy, but that would come with a downside of having no high gear. The Royal BM17 has a fairly large fuel tank but terrible fuel efficiency, despite what the game's description says. Fuel tank, 280 liters. Fuel consumption efficiency, the highest fuel expenditure when the engine is under the heaviest stress from sideboard plus attached cargo or fully loaded semi-trailer on rough terrain, traveling fast in auto or in rare cases going in low plus, is a stable 22.2 liters per minute. That's with a highway gearbox, all-wheel drive, no diff lock, and chain tires. Now, if you keep the same conditions but only change the gearbox to an off-road and the tires to off-road, you get the highest fuel expenditure figure of 20.4 liters per minute. That was a little surprising to me. Now, I will say that if you're on road only and you're using the highway gearbox versus off-road gearbox, yeah, you'll get better fuel efficiency if you stay on road. But often, even in the earlier maps, there are many places where there is plenty of road, yes, but there's also plenty of off-road that connects those roads. So there's little off-road patches in between, and sometimes there can be deep mud. And whatever advantage you get from the highway gearbox, I think it's outweighed by the advantage overall of the off-road, because this game just won't let you go fast enough to really get the best fuel efficiency of the highway. I think the gearbox is honestly just in the wrong game. Consumption depends upon damage status, terrain, gearbox, and load carried on rear tandem axle plus haul trailers. So if your vehicle is significantly damaged, especially the engine, you can expect far higher fuel drainage. I wouldn't even call it consumption, it's straight drainage. And of course, if the fuel tank is damaged, then it's going to leak, and then you run out of fuel very fast. Spikes can and do go over the stable figures mentioned above. However, since these are very difficult to get to in the first place, you should expect average/typical expenditure to be well below the stated amounts. So if I say 22.2 liters, if you're on road with a highway gearbox, you're going to do much better than the off-road gearbox. But overall, off-road gearbox actually performs better, in my experience. What I have discovered about the highway gearbox is that its advantages just aren't for SnowRunner. This may be a design flaw, but in any case, since the highway gearbox shifts up to the 8th gear, which takes time and momentum to get to, and because this game's mostly off-road terrain just won't allow you to build up such momentum, you won't get the maximum fuel efficiency this gearbox can deliver, theoretically. So having said that, this gearbox does give you the high gear, whereas the balanced doesn't offer that. So there's benefit in equipping the highway gearbox, over the balanced at least, but just don't expect the fuel efficiency to be noticeably better than the balanced gearbox, or even better at all than off-road. In fact, in my experience with this truck and others on off-road terrain, The highway gearbox performs worse with respect to fuel efficiency, but on its natural terrain, sure, it'll do better than the other gearboxes, especially if you could get it up to the higher than 4th or 5th gears. Honestly, I would recommend getting the off-road gearbox, even if you intend to keep the Royal BM17 on icy roads with a chain tire set. Developed for heavy haulage, including tank transport, the Scammell S24 was not built with fuel efficiency in mind. We see the same thing in the SnowRunner version of this truck, the Royal BM17. Has good power for a heavy-duty hauler, but not very good when it comes to fuel efficiency. For contrast, the Caterpillar CT680 uses the same engine as this truck, but its fuel consumption doesn't go well beyond 18.0 liters per minute, even in spikes. As mentioned earlier in this section, this truck easily goes up to 20.4 liters per minute, with spikes showing even higher consumption. Functionality, usability, reliability. While the Royal BM17 is classified by SnowRunner as an off-road vehicle, it fits better in the heavy-duty classification. It offers you the same customizability as its heavy-duty counterparts, except that the crane plus flatbed plus trailer combo doesn't work. Now, it doesn't work for many other trucks as well. They may be heavy-duty as well, like the White Western Star 4964, Caterpillar CT680, but other trucks do have that combination that works. It gets the typical heavy-duty external frame add-ons, making this truck versatile and dynamic, and usable for many contracts, tasks, and contests. And because it performs better than the lower tier of the heavy-duty trucks, it has to be at least that good. It has some advantages over the likes of even the Cat CT680 and the White Western Star 4964, but some disadvantages as well, performing at around the same level. In my Alaska playthrough, when I didn't give this truck a chance, I restricted it to a fuel carrier function, equipping chain tires and a highway gearbox. This was a waste as this truck is far more capable. It can be used for low saddle trailer transport, hauling 5-piece cargo trailers or large 3,700 liter fuel carriers. I attached a crane and flatbed and did some work that way, and the crane can be attached with a low saddle as well, so that it won't need any crane support to load its cargo semi-trailers. However, it does work better as a pure hauler with crane support from another truck, able to carry and tow up to 6 pieces of cargo at a time. If I hadn't bought the Cat CT680, and if I had given this truck a fair chance, I would have utilized it extensively in Alaska. Instead, I ended up testing it in Michigan in another playthrough save file and decided, hey, you know what, this truck is better than I initially thought. So now for my verdict. Much like the civilian, commercial Scammell S24, SnowRunner's Royal BM17 is a heavy-duty truck ranking near to the top tier of its class. It shares its engine with the Cat CT680, one of the more powerful in this category. The all-wheel drive comes standard by default, but there is unfortunately no differential lock available for this truck. Personally, I think the unavailable differential lock is not as much of a handicap as I first thought, although it is a disadvantage when compared against how much better the Royal BM17 is in other metrics than all of the heavy-duty trucks, or at least how it measures up. Its overall performance is at the top of its class. It has a normal turning radius for trucks of its size. The body balance is on par with the White Western Star 4964 and therefore superior to the other trucks in this class. And the fuel tank is pretty large, although the fuel consumption is bad. SnowRunner puts this in its off-road category, but it functions more like a heavy-duty class, getting access to the typical add-ons, making it a versatile and useful truck. Unfortunately, the loading crane plus flatbed plus trailer combo doesn't work for this hauler, but it does attach trailers. It's basically a typical heavy-duty truck with superior power and larger tires, but minus the diff lock. Since you get this truck for free, needing only to rescue it back to the garage, you should upgrade it as soon as possible to get it to work. It's a very nice addition to your fleet in Alaska and beyond. That's it for this review. I hope you liked it. I only have a few more left to go in Alaska, I think I have the Dairy Longhorn and the Chevrolet Apache, and I'll have some extra footage videos as well. And then I'll be, once I complete the playthrough of Taymyr, I believe is the next region, then I'll have that footage and the reviews and trucks from that. But for now, yeah, this is one of my last ones from Alaska. And of course, you get this in Alaska, you find it in Alaska. So this was the right place to do the review for this truck. I hope you liked it. If you do, don't forget to give me a like, share, and subscribe. Thank you very much for watching. So Niche Gaming, signing off.